While most of the political press is focused on the Democrats, Donald Trump is also coming to crunch time over his pick of a running mate. The Republican National Convention begins a week from today, and Trump has hinted that he wants to announce his pick before then. The Wall Street Journal today is reporting that the pick now comes down to just two people, Florida Senator Marco Rubio and Ohio Senator J.D. Vance. If Trump picks Rubio, the former president would have to change his voter registration to either New York or New Jersey because the Constitution mandates that running mates cannot be from the same state. That's easy enough. The negative for Vance is that he's only 39 years old, but both Vance and Rubio would bring strength to the Republican ticket. Steve Grumbine is founder and CEO of the nonprofits Real Progressives and Real Progress in Action and host of the podcast Macro and Cheese. Steve is also a leading activist and evangelist for modern monetary theory. Steve, welcome back. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me on, guys, gals.
Thank you, man. Steve, let's start with Joe Biden. He said this morning that he is in it to win it and that Democrats need to back off and just let him run his race. So let's sort through this. There are a lot of important Democrats now on record as saying that Biden has to go. What are the chances that he actually remains in this race realistically? And I'm talking about just 5.5 weeks before the Democratic convention.
Well, let's be clear. You know, when 2028 comes around, there's a bunch of people that don't want to be running against incumbent Kamala Harris simply because incumbents, they get the nod no matter what. As you saw this recent time when a real proper primary would have rallied the left in possibly even to supporting, quote unquote, the nominee, they instead doubled down, cut out all opposition, all competition, any discussion, any debate. And so the left, of which I'm a member of, sees genocide on the docket. And it's really impossible to reward genocide as the lesser evil. I don't know if, like, in the grand scheme of all things evil, I don't know that there's a thing greater than genocide. So I think that there's a lot of people that are looking at that and saying, well, I'm not supporting him no matter what. You could tell me everything you want about Project 2025, a.k.a. the next phase of the Mount Pelerin Society, a.k.a. the Powell Memo, on and on, right? You can tell me this till the cows come home. You have to find something worse than genocide to get me to budge. So there's a large swath of people that simply will not vote for Biden regardless of what they do. And there's an even larger group of people who I think are saying to themselves, Kamala didn't even win her own district. She didn't get one single delegate during her run for presidency. Nobody likes her. Nobody wants her. But the fear of Trump may move people to displace Biden. And Biden's performance the other night was like, it was unwatchable. Like, it wasn't even the train wreck you'd like to see, you know, that you can't divert your eyes from. It was putrid to listen to Trump lie after lie after lie, and Biden be so feckless and incompetent that he couldn't even defend the most basic things. Like forget my own political angle. Just thinking about friends sitting in a room and one guy sitting there lobbing idiotic lie after lie after lie, which is all Trump did. To follow that up with somebody, and it's not a stutter, folks. With all due respect, you know, it's not a stutter. This is a person that forgets where he is, and it's clear, and he's not capable of talking on his feet. He's just not. And that, you know, are we fully exposing that the presidency is ceremonial like the royal family now, and that we have an administrative state that runs the country without the president?
Right.
If that's the case, I mean, that's what it looks like.
Right.
And I think people are seeing that and they're saying, oh, my God, we can't allow this to happen. And so right, wrong, or indifferent. And, you know, my position on this stuff is I believe this is the oligarch Olympics. And I think you can tell by the selection process. This is more democratic feudalism than it is democracy.
Yes.
But with that in mind, I do believe that Biden will either survive this by simply leveraging the good old boy network of Obama and Clinton and the rest of them, or they're going to put Kamala in there, which I think either way, I hate to say this, but I think they lose to Trump. And when I say I hate to say it, it's like I don't have a dog in that fight. Neither of them represent the working class.
No, they
Neither
don't.
of them represent progress. And one final piece to this that I think is really important. I know people think talking about macroeconomics is esoteric and it maybe doesn't have its place in these conversations. But I can literally slaughter both sides of the equation by understanding modern monetary theory. I can literally slice through every lie they say. And for me, their words hit differently than they do with people that don't understand macroeconomics. And so every battlefield they place up there, every lie, it's very hard for me to take it seriously because I know the answer. And yet getting through the noise of that emotional shrieking that is occurring on both sides of the aisle is quite a challenge. So for me at this point in time, I suspect that the good old boy network will rally around Biden. However, if it keeps getting worse, and I don't see any sign of it getting better, I suspect they'll try to find a way to replace him.
Well, you've anticipated pretty much every one of my questions. I want to sort through it. So first, we're about 5.5 weeks away from the Democratic convention. How long can Biden realistically hang on before he does irreversible damage to whomever the Democratic nominee ends up being? Because the Democrats are going to need time to put a campaign together, right?
Right.
I guess. Well, I mean, they haven't seemed to want to bother other than to say, we're not, still
They've
not
ignored
Trump,
it so far.
Still not Trump. That's what they're doing. Still not Trump. And aren't you worried about abortion? So I guess they can just keep doing that.
Yeah. So let's just say this. So I got into some fights with some folks trying to explain that, Roe v. Wade was taken down on Biden's watch. The opportunity to codify it with all those millions and millions of dollars from donors never thought to codify Roe v. Wade. Then when the courts obviously were stacked against him, there's nothing in the law that prevents him from reforming and stacking the court. The Supreme Court doesn't even exist in reality. So the idea of him being able to stack and pack the court to change the outcome, hey, I mean, my goodness, the Supreme Court just ruled on this presidential immunity. What would stop him from doing something like that other than pure incompetence? So, at the end of the day, all the tropes about, my body autonomy and stuff like that, which I support full-throatedly, by the way. I want to be crystal clear on that, okay? But it's not that I don't support body autonomy, and it's not that I don't support the woman's right to choose. It's not that I don't support her unquestionable right to choose. What I question is whether or not the Democrats are really there to stop that or use it as a fundraising weapon.
Right.
And at this point in time, I have no evidence that they mean business. None, zero. I've seen Hillary equivocate on what it means to stand against, stand up for abortion. I've seen Biden say really ridiculous Catholic-friendly things that tell me he's more MAGA than the left, more non-woman's rights. And so, for me, those kinds of conversations can't be had with normie friends that are just reactionaries, emotional reactionaries. You have to have a sober outlook and ask yourself, if this was such an important thing, and I do believe it is, but if it was important to them, why didn't they take action when they had a supermajority? And they never did. And so to me, something so vital as woman's autonomy, it's important to the people, but it's not important to the powers that be. And the next part to that, and I think it's equally important, is the concept of how long does it take for Biden to wreck a potential candidate, from stepping in, their chances to build it. Well, just remember this. It's a very simple message, and I think Michelle hit it on the head. They don't have a message. Project 2025 is a wish list for the right wing. The left wing's response is, well, Trump. There isn't a vision for what the left is. It's not the left, though. I want to be crystal clear. Biden does not represent the left. He represents a consensus right of center group of people that are pro-capitalist and that have zero relationship to the working class. So with that in mind, when I think about what it would take nothing. It's the same message, but Trump, Project 2025, to which I say, because I have spent years talking about neoliberalism, I have devoted almost all of my activism, aside from MMT, to deriding the privatization and the neoliberal construct and the Wall Street framing. And that is literally what the Democratic Party is.
Mm-hmm.
So this idea of Project 2025 is just one more continuation of the right wing putting up diabolical hopes and dreams like Contract with America and all these other things that they've always done. And what exactly is it about Biden or any of them, quite frankly, that represent a clear departure from that ideology? And I hate to break it to you, but it's none.
That's it.
And
None.
it's really not. So I don't know how they prevent the next candidate from carrying that dead weight, but I don't think they are even worried about it. I think that's what they are.
Well, Steve, you've been very outspoken on social media in your opposition to Joe Biden, making your argument from the left, as you just said. Joe Biden has never been the friend of the working man, despite his decades of protestations. So for progressive voters, is there any hope in the Democratic Party, whether the nominee is Joe Biden or somebody else? And I'm assuming the answer is no. And if the answer is no, where should progressives go in this election?
So, I'm not here to tell you who to vote for. I'm really not. What I am here to do, I will stand up and tell you what I won't do. And what I won't do is lie to make something scarier than it is. You won't get me all frothed up so that I can say dumb things to people that I know the screenshots will show up later that it's like Grumbine. No, I am telling you point blank that nothing about the Democratic Party represents working class Americans. And this is why the Trump phenomenon is even happening at all. Trump is a lying scumbag. Let me get that out of the way. I have no interest whatsoever in what Donald Trump is selling. None, zero. Mm-hmm. But dumb people, and I can't say it any other way. It's not smart. It's dumb people think that means, oh, what do you want, Trump?
Right.
And it's like, no, you moron. No, it's not. I don't want Trump. What I want is a party, a politic, a democracy that represents voters, that represents the pain and suffering of the working class, and not a bunch of pet things that they use as political gun to the head to make you do the undoable, the unconscionable, like overlooking genocide.
Right.
So for me, if you think about this, a recent article came out, and they've stopped being able to track the actual dead in Gaza. It's because the hospitals are blown to smithereens, etc. But a recent post came out, article came out, study came out that showed a conservative estimate of 188,000 dead in Gaza. Palestinians dead. That's 8% of their population wiped off the map, erased. And that could not have been done without the full-throated support of one genocide Joe Biden. And I know that makes Democrats, they're so upset because they can't even, you look at their timelines for social media. I mean, that's how I judge a person's, social media activity. Have they, in fact, spoken out on the worst crisis in history of my lifetime? And when I see people go, but Trump would do worse. I say, but Project 2024 is happening right now.
Right.
You can't get me to 2025 yet. I got to deal with 2024 where I'm watching a massacre of up to 30,000+ children. Like, I can't sleep at night over this stuff. And they have no problem trying to guilt me as if I'm somehow or another saying I want Donald Trump. But it's not that at all. It's their weak-minded, pathetic analysis that robs us of a real democracy. But it's not their fault, to be fair. To be fair, they are being propagandized by the most powerful media, the most powerful conflation of state and industry that mankind has ever seen, making Nazi Germany look like fool's gold, children's play. We have got the most massive military in the world. We've got the strongest media lying. I mean, Leni Riefenstahl would blush at what we put out there for news.
Yes.
And people are brainwashed. So who would I tell them to vote for? Let's get back to that.
Well,
if I was to vote for someone in this, I would probably vote for Jill Stein.
Yeah.
But in fairness, let me just say, at this moment in time, I believe that the mask is off. What would Jill Stein do in office right now? Immediately, Joe Biden's going to be impeached next term or whatever. And Jill doesn't have any Congress people in her corner at all.
No.
Like this, she doesn't have any of the internal infrastructure that would prevent her from getting impeached within a month. She doesn't have any protection inside the duopoly's massive control of every institution in the country. These deep state institutions that really run the thing, and that's the administrative state. And what did the Supreme Court just do? It eliminated the strength of the administrative state. So I don't know what would happen, but maybe, I mean, she's going to, let's say in the best case scenario, Jill gets 5% of the vote. Mm-hmm. The rules that talk about that 5% thing, that's controlled by the duopoly.
Sure it is.
It's controlled by the duopoly. So how does she do anything with this? So I'm not, it's all about, participation awards and trophies and stuff like that. There's nothing substantive there. So to me, at the end of the day, we need to build power outside of this process. That's my stance, because otherwise you get swept up in this just nonsensical lie that's going on. And every single time the next Project 2025 comes up, there's a gun to your head one more time to do the unthinkable. And it's time to stop it.
Yeah, I mean, it would require sort of breaking the two-party grip at a bunch of levels at once, I mean, I was, speaking to people over the weekend who were saying it's such a crime that you don't hear about anybody else who is running, not necessarily that currently they have a chance. But yeah, there's Jill Stein. I think Cornel West is still in the race. I think Marianne Williamson unsuspended her campaign. And of course, RFK Jr., who's got, the most name recognition and the most popularity. But you wouldn't know. And as you say, even if one of them were to come to power, they really would lack the sort of institutional support to protect them inside a Congress that is increasingly uninterested in legislating. But, interested in, are out for blood politically. Yeah, there was a whole bunch of controversy over that Lancet piece over the weekend, Steve, that you mentioned.
I call it the oligarch Olympics, okay? And there's nothing here. It's two capitalist powers that have aligned themselves that are, in the end, they all win, no matter how it goes. We don't, though. And, there's something interesting that came out that I think to put an exclamation point on this. Interest payments have just exceeded the military budget this year. The interest from the interest income channel for the interest rate hikes, the amount of money we're spending to people that already have money, the rich, on Biden's watch, has now exceeded that of all the money we spend this year on the military industrial complex. I want you to process that. And when you understand that this has been a handout to the rich and not on a Republican watch, it's happened on a Democrat's watch.
Yeah.
And when you understand that, if you can just extract yourself a micro inch away from the fuzz, get your face off the mirror and look, you understand that they are not fighting for us, either of them. And so to me, it's hard for me to get angry at people that buy into it. And yet at the same time, they're all too quick to get angry at me for having an opinion. They'll withhold their support. They'll pull back. He wants Trump. Not a true statement. Anyway,
I'm with you. I want to talk about a couple of scenarios, too. Let's say Biden drops out of the race and anoints Kamala Harris. First, is Lindsey Graham correct that either Josh Shapiro or Gretchen Whitmer would bring the most strength to the Democratic ticket? Or does it just not matter?
I don't really think it matters. I think that the people that are terrified of Trump are a certain group of people. And I think the people that will vote blue no matter who are a certain group of people. I think the people that are, Trumpers are Trumpers. And Mike Tracy, put out a pretty interesting thread about his time in Pennsylvania at a rally where he realized it's a kind of a cult of personality. They're illogical. They don't think. So you're not going to win them over. You're not winning. What you're doing is you're trying to find that sloppy middle that kind of shifts and flows back and forth between parties. And this is why Biden has, definitely pivoted far to the right, as, he talks about illegals at the border and nothing to do with the crackdown on students at universities and stuff like that. I mean, so, ultimately, I think what you're dealing with right now is Kamala Harris has name recognition, but she doesn't have it for the right reasons. So I think that, it really comes down to, are the, oh my God, Trump derangement folks far enough in the fold that they will say, I'll take whoever, anyone but Trump. It's the anyone but Trump vote, right? Because I know that the left is lost to them. The left is lost to them. Arab Americans are lost to them. In particularly, obviously, Palestinian Americans are lost to them. And quite frankly, I think a great many people that were once sympathetic to them after watching that debate performance the other night and listening to everybody make excuses, I think the lack of transparency has created an entirely different group of people that are like just fully disgusted with the Democrats. So, how that plays out, I can't answer. But I do think that Kamala will probably be their likely person. And I do believe that if that anyone but Trump vote is strong enough that she'll get the nod.
Well, let's say that Biden drops out, but the Democrats have an open convention, that it's not just Kamala Harris that people rally around. Other people want this nomination. Who runs for president at the convention besides Harris, and who has an actual shot at winning the nomination?
I think Marianne Williamson, obviously unsuspending her account, presents an opportunity, but she doesn't present an opportunity for many of the she's had a really bad take on Zionism. She's had a really horrific take. And so I think that her ignorance on some really important geopolitical stuff is going to prevent her from appealing to anyone like myself, for example. But she's definitely someone who has more progressive credentials, if you will, than any of the above. So I would imagine Marianne Williamson. I would also imagine it's possible that you get some of the old retreads like Amy Klobuchar, maybe even a Pete Buttigieg. But I genuinely believe that the Kamala Harris train is in. As far as the vice president pick, though, I think, you look at Whitmer and I'm not sure America is ready for two women at the top. I'm not saying that from my perspective. Yeah. I'm saying that I could see that being a thing. It might be a great thing. It might be supercharging thing. But I can see enough people that are still in their patriarchal views struggle busting with that. I was just going to say, as far as Shapiro goes, Shapiro is very much a business conservative Democrat. And so he provides possibly a pathway in a state like Pennsylvania, obviously, so you've got an opportunity there to leverage that centrist pro-business guy. But I genuinely don't believe that it really matters. I think the people that are anti-Trump are anti-Trump, and
that's it. Well, quickly, I wanted to ask you too. The Republican convention begins a week from today, and Trump said that he wants to announce his vice presidential pick before the start of the convention. The Journal today tells us it's either Rubio or Vance. Marco Rubio would bring foreign policy and intelligence experience. He sits on both committees. But J.D. Vance is a 39-year-old billionaire and a fawning acolyte of Donald Trump. Care to make a prediction?
I think they'll probably go with Rubio because he knows where his weak spots are, and his weak spots are the traditional Republican.
Yeah.
And I think that Rubio represents more of the old guard Republican, even though I know he's got some they've battled in the past, but who hasn't Trump battled with?
Right.
So I would imagine it would be Rubio. The money talks, right? And you got a billionaire guy out there with extreme exuberance for Trump. Maybe Trump's hubris will get the better of him and he'll pick his mirror, and that will ultimately far right align them. And the question then becomes, do Republicans rebuke that? Do they jump ship and go with the very Republican-esque Biden or Kamala Harris game? I mean, let's be fair. These guys are right of Ronald Reagan.
All of them.
Okay.
All four of them are.
Every one of them are
three of
right
them,
of Ronald Reagan.
Yeah.
And to for all the weeping and gnashing of teeth people do when they try to invoke Reagan, you've got worse than Reagan now.
Yeah.
So, go figure.
Absolutely true. Steve Grumbine, thanks for joining us. Steve is the founder and CEO of the nonprofits Real Progressives and Real Progress in Action. He's the host of the podcast Macro and Cheese and a leading activist and evangelist for modern monetary theory.